Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Yes, it's Saturday night, the 9th of December, 2023. And some people might be saying, Roy, it's Saturday night, and, aren't you going out and doing something? Well, I did earlier today. Hello, I see we do have somebody coming in. I did earlier today, spent quite a bit of time out, family and friends, and special times too. And frankly, I didn't want to be around the traffic tonight. It was messy, as most of you probably know who realize what time of year it is, and people are out, searching for those special gifts early on. And I had had enough of it already. I wasn't out. I did go shopping today, but it was kind of a different type of thing. And it just got nasty. So anyway, I was home this evening. Shabbat, yes, so that's one reason why I'm doing this. It's one reason why I'm doing this. Actually, it's over with now. Shabbat's over with now. It's technically Sunday, right? Hi, Walter. How you doing? Jerry Leopold, Alan. Anyway, hello everybody. It's hard for me to see the chat, of course. Well, why am I doing this? I talked to a friend of mine today, an old friend. I've known him for 30 years. Seems like all my friends I've known for decades. And he said, Roy, I have a couple of suggestions for you because, he's very well, he comes from a family, they're all Baptists. They've studied the Bible and all of that. And he says, when I follow you, he says, I have a good background in Christianity and the Bible and all that, and sometimes it seems like you start off in the middle of the page, and I'm kind of lost. I don't know where you're coming from or where you're going. So, could you kind of give a little hint, a little synopsis when you get started, so that we kind of know where you're coming from and where you're going? That was his first suggestion, and I thought I was doing that, but I guess I haven't done it very well. And his second suggestion was that I get off YouTube and go to Rumble so I don't have to guard my words. Well, I'm not ready to go to Rumble yet, but I am going to try to, because I have Odyssey, of course. But I might try to go ahead and I might do Rumble a little later. It just all depends on a number of things. But at any rate, so what I am going to do, I'm going to try to be good at this, is explain at the beginning of the videos where I'm coming from and where I'm going with it in general terms, so I don't just start off in the middle of the page or the middle of the book like he was saying. So let's start off here. First things first, this is a spiritual discussion, bringing in some ancient languages, principally Egyptian and Hebrew. Okay, just so you know. If you're not interested in this, it's fine with me. Go ahead and do whatever else that you'd like to do on a Saturday night. If you have a date night, boy, that'd be great. So I don't expect you to put that on hold at all. So again, this is going to be a spiritual and language discussion. That's number one. Number two, in the description box below, is the reason why I decided to do this. As I said, I'd been out all day. I came home. And it's kind of relaxing, No, I haven't had any alcohol. Just so you know, I'm drinking water, by the way. This is not vodka, it's just water. Okay, just water. And I'm going through, I have a lot of subscriptions that I follow. One of which is the God in a Nutshell by Trey Smith. A lot of you will know who I'm talking about. Trey Smith is a very good researcher and presenter. And, I've followed him for years now, and he always has good programs. He always, he travels quite a bit. He'll take you places, let you see some of the ancient areas, talk to people. He'll interview very interesting scholars, etc. And so I find it necessary to kind of keep track of what he does. And today, this particular video popped up on my feed there, on my YouTube feed, and it's called I Am. Now, you Jews out there, don't be reaching for rocks. We're big people now, and it's okay to talk about this. Even the Tetragrammaton, despite what the rabbis say, Torah says otherwise. Yeah, you respect it, but there's nothing wrong with saying it. But at any rate, the Tetragrammaton, the YHVH, is another form of I am. In the Hebrew, it's ahaya, asher ahaya. That's I am that I am, and it doesn't really mean that. I'm going to explain some things here as I have in the past. But then the YHVH is basically the same thing. It's to exist, to breathe, and it has all those other meanings I've discussed before. But at any rate, where I'm going to go with this is I'm addressing this brilliant and I don't know if Trey made this observation or if he got it from somebody else. He didn't say he did, but I suspect he has people that he researches with, and I'm going to expand on what he presented, because when I first heard it, I went, Trey, you can't go from Egyptian to English and say that that's I am. And you'll see what I'm talking about when you see the description. Let me give you a real short synopsis of his video. What his video is about is a individual in Egyptian history. It's historical, okay, named Imhotep. And like him, for many years, I have suspected that Imhotep is actually the historical figure that we would know as Joseph of Egypt, the one who was sold into the slavery by his brothers, the son of Jacob through Rachel, sold by his brothers into Egypt, and then he became viceroy in Egypt, second only to Pharaoh. He interpreted a dream, and then he had them save grain. And I've talked about Joseph's good side and bad side on a number of videos in my religion series. And that's another issue. Tonight I want to stick with this. So at any rate, he makes this connection between Imhotep and Joseph of Egypt. And I have, like I said, I have felt that that's the case as well for a very long time for a number of reasons. And if you watch the video, and I think it's about 12 minutes in the description box below, you'll understand where I'm coming from. You may not agree with it, but it certainly makes a lot of sense. But when he brought up the I am, because of Imhotep, which is spelled in English Imhotep, he jumped to at least when I first heard it, it was like he jumped to I am, like God said, I am, right? And I went, well, wait a minute, Trey, you really can't do that. Yeah, that's an English transliteration. Imhotep is an English transliteration of the Egyptian hieroglyphics. You can't do that. You gotta. It's not. It doesn't mean I am, because the English transliteration is I am in Imhotep. I don't think I have that up here. Let me write it down for you, but you'll see it in the video. But this is what it is. And I've only got my red pen here, so I'm just going to write this right here. Hopefully you can see it. Okay, that's the name of the Egyptian individual, Imhotep. Again, you'll understand more when you see the description. So what am I going to do here? What's my whole point? My whole point will be that he's onto something. And after I got my Egyptian out, I'm not an Egyptologist, but when I was studying all of these things, Egyptian or Hebrew, the Israelite culture and all that, and of course the Israelites spend a lot of time in Egypt, I had to study some Egyptian history, some Egyptian language, different times, Coptic at one point, hieroglyphs at another. And the Egyptian of, say, the first dynasty of Egypt is not the same as the Egyptian under Cleopatra, and the Seleucids there that were, the Ptolemies. So just like English has, even in the last 500 years, has changed somewhat. So it's not always exactly the same. But holy cow, I looked at that and I said, wait a minute. He may not realize how close he really is, even though the transliteration may not be exactly the way to go. So what this video is going to be that I'm going to show you tonight is that in fact, whether it's a miracle of God, which probably is, or it's just an incredible discovery, I think you'll find it interesting. As a matter of fact, before I get started here, well, we're live. So if you're seeing this after I've put it up, in other words, if you're watching it after it's live, if once it's been put up on YouTube, before you watch my video, okay, go into the description box and watch Trey Smith's video, I Am, okay? Because then you'll understand a little bit more about what I'm doing here. So my friend that I talked to today said, please tell us where you're going before you get started. I hope I did an okay job on that. Let's dive into it. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, when Moses went up on the mount and he met God, he asked God what his name is, and God said, Ahaya, Asher, Ahaya, right? Which is normally translated as I am that I am. That's not really true, okay? That's not really what it means, but that's the extant version of it. What it really means is, I will be whom I will be. That's what it really means. And that's why he then told Moses that Moses was a god to Pharaoh, because Moses had his name in him, okay? And I've talked about some of that before. All right. Well, I will be whom I will be as opposed to I am. I am and I will be whom I will be. Another way to look at that is who will. In other words, it shows existence. He has function, who will do something. And this becomes really important in the Egyptian translation. Really important. Okay, so again, Trey Smith's video, I Am. When you look at the hieroglyphs that Trey presents, there's a feather, there's an owl, and then there's this little thing here that looks like a brick with a little house on the top. This is a wheaten cake. What does that represent? Well, it represents pyramids. Pyramid in Egyptian, or I'm sorry, pyramid in Greek means wheaten cake. It means house of bread is what it means. And that corresponds to the Hebrew Bethlehem, which means house of bread. Okay, so you see the correspondences. The early Egyptians that Joseph was subject to when he was sold into slavery, they were Hebrew Hyksos. They were of Hebrew origin. So these correspondences between the Egyptians of Joseph's time and the Hebrews, even the whole thing with Bethlehem and Beth Shemesh and all that, are all related. Yeah, well, the wheat penny. Yeah, Hopkinson. Hi, Hopkinson. I got your thing today. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm trying to keep this simple, but when you're going from English to Hebrew and then back to Egyptian, you might have to follow me pretty closely. But this is really amazing. This should get some people really excited. You know how hard I am on the Hebrew scriptures. You know, I have a lot of concern about them. You know, I don't trust them 100%. People say, "Well, that's terrible. That's the word of God." Well, you know, by its own testimony, it says it isn't. Okay, I talked to you about Jeremiah 8:8, and I talked to you about Isaiah 28. You know, where they admit that all tables are full of vomit and that the scribes have played with things. Well, there's some things they can't play with very well, and I think this was one of them. Okay, so the feather means I. The owl, well, let me rephrase that. It has the phonetic sound of I. That would be more correct. The feather has the phonetic sound of I. The owl has a phonetic sound of M. Okay? And we're not going to worry about the wheaten cake here. That's a symbol to show the grain storage and all that of what Joseph did. Okay? All right. We're going to stick with these phonetic correspondences. So the feather in Egyptian has the phonetic sound of I, and the owl has the phonetic sound of M. Well, in Imhotep, there it is right there. I, because the first letter when you see Trey Smith's video, you'll see that. You'll have the feather, and then you'll have the owl, and then you'll have the wheat and cake. The feather goes here for the phonetic sound of I. The owl goes here, and you'll see this in his video, goes right underneath the M for the phonetic sound of M. And then the Hotep has to do with what he did, he sees. Okay, and Trey, I'm going to that's Trey's part, so I don't want to go too far into that because he does such a good job of it. He talks about the different how the different pharaohs, for instance, their names show what gods they represent and things like that. Well, in this video that Trey does, he's saying that Hotep, who is Joseph, speaks for the God I am. And when he said that, I went, like I said a few minutes ago, I said, wait a minute, Trey, you can't make that jump from Egyptian and the just because it's in Hotep's name, you can't say that I am is the I am of God. Well, then I stopped and I went, like I said a few minutes ago, I said, wait a second. And I started looking at my Egyptian again, and then I found this right in his video. He's got the feather, again, which has the phonetic sound of I, and the owl, which has the phonetic sound of M. But then I got to wondering, well, they're not going to go around saying the I am, because in Hebrew, it was what I said a few minutes ago, ahaya, asher, ahaya. Well, how does that translate or even transliterate into Egyptian? Well, it does. Watch this. This is crazy. So this was somebody else doing this. There's no doubt about it. Maybe some priest somewhere, but I don't think so. When you put the Hebrew letters to the Egyptian, okay, that's what we have here. Okay, these two letters here. The phonetic sound in Hebrew of the I is the Yod. There it is right there, which would correspond with in other words, the transliteration, the phonetic sound going from the Egyptian I to the Hebrew would be the Yod. Transferring the phonetic sound of the Egyptian hieroglyphic of the owl, M, would be the Mem in Hebrew. The problem is, you read Hebrew from left to right. I'm sorry, from right to left. I look at that and I can get myself. You read Hebrew from right to left. You read Egyptian, it depends. Usually you go up and down, but at any rate, in English we read it from left to right. In Hebrew, you read it from right to left. So I was still saying, wait a minute, that wouldn't be right, because this word is basically me. Me. And it means who will. What? It means who will. Again, that goes back to the idea of I will be who or whom I will be. So it's the same thing, basically. I am is the same thing in the Egyptian mind, because I don't think they said I am. In the Egyptian mind, it will be somebody who has will. Who will. In other words, he'll do an action. He does something. Who will, because that shows existence. You see the connection here. It's really incredible. So when I got to looking at this again, I thought, okay, well, let's say that they had the Hebrew letters there of Yod, Mem, but they're, of course, not going to go from right to left, because they're going to be in the Egyptian mind. So they're going to have the phonetic sound attached to the, again, I've said this 3 or 4 times now, just so you understand. The phonetic sound of the I with the feather would go with the Yod, all right? And the phonetic sound of the owl of the M would go with the Mem. And they're reading basically this way, or actually it would be up and down, but that's okay. We're just showing how it actually would be sounding. So in other words, to convey the idea of the name I am, the God I am, the Egyptians would basically it would be like this. I'm sorry, I should have done this earlier. Then you'd see it better. And I'm not good at drawing an owl, so don't make fun of me. I'm not an artist, okay? All right, and then you'd have the wheaten cake here. You see that? So in other words, and this would be up and down where we can do it from left to right. There it is right there, okay? So if you put this again is the yod, this is the mem, and then the wheaten cake. Ladies and gentlemen, this is crazy. You know, like I said, I've studied these things for a long time, and when Trey came up with this tonight, I was a little, no, Trey, you can't jump that, you can't make it that far. I am and Imhotep, you can't do that. Well, in fact, whether it makes sense or not, it just works out. It really does. I hope you see what I'm saying here. This is really, really interesting. That's almost like it was designed to come down to our day in our language, where we would pronounce this guy's name Imhotep, and the I am, in fact, both phonetically in the Egyptian and phonetically in the Hebrew, works out with also the additional point that the word me, which is the owl and the feather reading, you know, if you read from right to left, me, the who will, I will be whom I will be, I will be, who will. You see the connections? Well, my friend, I don't know if I've done a very good job explaining this, because this brings in, you know, a whole lot. Egyptian, Hebrew, the hieroglyphics, understanding what the actual translations are, that, like, instead of I am, that I am, because of course that's how it is in the Hebrew. It's, or in the Bible translation, I am that I am. So somebody took that into account as well, but it's all there. Who will, I will be, who I will be, and I am, even in our language and in the way it's translated in the Bible. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I've run into these things before. When I was first studying my Hebrew, like I said, we had to get into some Egyptian because of the correspondences, and I knew about some of these, but this one, to actually come into our language, both is who will and I am. That's extremely important. Let me go ahead and take a few questions. That's really what I've got for you tonight, and I've explained it as best as I can, given all that's involved in this. This is about as simple as I can make it. And if you watch Trey's video before, or if you go watch it now, it'll make even more sense why I brought this up the way I did. I want to thank Trey Smith for making this video, and I was very dubious when he first said it, and as I thought about it and then I put it together, I went, holy mackerel, this is incredible. It hits phonetically on three levels: the Hebrew, the Egyptian, and English. It's crazy. It's crazy. All right, let me take some questions here. All right, and then I wonder if it's programming. Well, yeah, of some sort. I mean, you know, God is the great mathematician, right? Mathematics is really the basis of everything, and language is based on mathematics. I don't know if you know that or not, but English is still also, but you know, in Egyptian and in Hebrew and in some other languages, you know, like in Hebrew, the Aleph is one, and it goes all the way through to the letter Tav, which is the letter 22. And they have those numeric correspondences and then different mixes in there. So it's all mathematics, and even every language is, actually. Okay, just in different ways. I can't help but think Moloch when I see owls. Yeah, well, there are good things about owls and there are bad things. It's a sign of wisdom. Okay, uh, but the owl can also be evil, of course, right? It's just like I've said before. There's a good and a bad. Look at the rainbow. Today, especially, we look at the rainbow in two different ways. It was a promise by God and His sign in the sky, but it's also being used in another way, and you should know what I'm talking about without me saying it, right? The five star, or the Star of David, the six-sided star. Um, that was an ancient symbol that had nothing to do with what it does today. Okay, the same for the swastika. Uh, so everything has a good and a bad purpose, and you've got to remember that anciently some of these things were changed by the evil side so that they could abscond with God's message to us. And then something like this happens, and the Egyptologists didn't even see this. The Egyptologists talk about they don't make a difference between the I of I am Roy, or uh, I like something. They don't make a distinguish. They don't distinguish between that use of I and the fact that God called himself I am, or I will be whom I will be. They don't make that connection. But there it is for you right there in three languages: Egyptian, Hebrew, and English. That's crazy. All right. And like I said, this is, so don't get tied up on a symbol that the evil side is absconded with to twist it and corrupt it. Okay, always be aware of that. Okay, certainly there's an owl like at Bohemian Grove, right? Yeah, it's true. They've used it and they've twisted it for their own use. Okay, the night creature, the screech owl. The screech owl actually is talking about Lilith. So it's the female demon. Okay, but it also, in the good side, means wisdom, right? So wisdom, of course, is Sophia, right? If those of you who are into that sort of thing. Or how did you get so cool? Cool. Debbie. Hi, Debbie. You think I'm cool? That means a lot to me, Debbie. I appreciate that. Debbie and I have been friends now we first talked. I guess she was following me on my YouTube for a while, and I was doing a walk around downtown Salt Lake, showing some of my old stomping ground and the church and the security people and what they do to me and that kind of stuff from the church and all that. And I went into a sushi restaurant and was doing a little additional upload from there. I was continuing the upload. I was surprised I had the signal. And she came on. She says, "Oh, I'm in Provo." That's where she was at the time. "I'm in Provo. Maybe we can get together for a beer sometime." And then she and her friend called me up, and we did a meeting up in uh, oh rats, I always get these things. Sundance Ski Resort. We went up there and we met so they could interview me because they were doing some stuff for the legislature, and they wanted to get my take on some things. So that's when I first met them, and she and I have known each other now for. I even had her on a. She used to be a bartender, so I had a nightcap where we interviewed her and talked about being a bartender, and then we also did a regular live stream about her being a Democrat, but the old conservative type Democrat, and actually that was kind of fun too. So anyway, we've known each other for a while. Thanks, Debbie. Let's see who else we've got here. How am I? Oh no! Yeah, is that right? Oh my gosh! Debbie just told me it's called the Owl Bar at Sundance Ski Resort. No, you've got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. Is that really the name of it? Folks, what? I didn't have any control of that. Do you see what just happened? That is so strange. Oh my gosh, Debbie, that's weird. Laura Eubank says, I never liked owls. I was always scared of them when I was little. They seemed evil to me. Well, yeah, they're night creatures by and large. And, the small, you have small ones, you have big ones. But again, don't, whenever you try to use your modern day understanding of things to understand ancient things, you're going to be mistaken. Okay. Don't use, and I've talked about that so often, Laura. I think it was Laura Eubanks. Yeah, I've talked about that so often in my religion and in my Eisenman series on the playlists. You can go to the playlists and look those up. Uh, you can't understand these things with the 21st or 20th or 21st century mindset, because it's like, if you go to Australia, it's just an example. Anybody from Australia here? They can verify what I'm saying here. You go to Australia and you see a little baby in a carriage, and you say to the mom, "That's a cute little bugger." She's probably going to beat you up, because bugger is a slam in Australia. You don't call a baby a bugger. Okay, so you see, if you don't understand the culture, then and you try to impose your culture on another, then you're going to make mistakes. So be careful of that. Okay, again, there are good and bad things about these symbols, and you have to understand what culture you're talking about so that you understand. Yeah, now that's true. The Star of Ramphun, that's true. Yeah, the star that's on the Israeli flag is the Ramphun. It is. It absolutely is. Uh, the five-pointed star, however, which a lot of people associate, the pentagram, that wasn't always evil. Okay, it depended upon a number of other things. So, again, the five-pointed star was absconded by the evil side. It used to be a good thing, and the six-pointed star, that's the Star of Ramphun, was actually it had some other meanings, but it was absconded, misused, twisted into this Ramphun idea, and of course that's talked about in the Bible. Of course, yes. It's funny they have it on the Israeli flag, isn't it? They'll deny that that's what it is, but that's what it is. Okay, just so you know. Roy, Moses received 10 commandments from God. Actually, they were copied from the yeah. The ancient Book of the Dead has a lot to do with this. The I am concept, like I was saying a few minutes ago, the Egyptians wouldn't say I am, apparently. Okay, but they did have these symbols, and the idea was, again, as I've shown you, who will, the will. This is a pictograph of the idea of existence. Somebody who has the ability to do something, who will do something. You see the importance of that? So, yeah, the Egyptian Book of the Dead and all these different things. Remember, and I've said this, the Israelites, quote unquote, were in Egypt for a long time, at least a couple of centuries. Some people will say 400 years, right? Whatever. Well, remember, where they went, which was the northern kingdom, those were Hebrews who ruled the north. There was a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom, and they were in the northern kingdom, and those were Hebrews. They were called Hyksos. But those ideas, the Egyptian ideas, the idea of a resurrection was Egyptian, and the Hebrews appropriated it, and they appropriated a lot of other things. I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just like today. If you're studying different religions, I've done this. If you're studying different religions and you find something that's good in one, even though there's a lot of other stuff you don't go with, you might grab that one thing and put it in as part of your understanding. And of course, if something else comes along to change that, hopefully you have the intestinal fortitude, the integrity to understand, well, now I got to kind of look at this a little different. All right. But just because it was like the Gilgamesh epics of the Sumerians. Pardon me, I'm burping a lot. Just because they took a story from there and altered it a little bit to teach a point doesn't make it wrong. The idea of a man God, of a Savior, you're Jesus Christ. That's ancient. That's real ancient. That goes back to the Sumerians. It goes back to the Akkadians, Dionysius, Asclepius, all these different gods long before Jesus came along. Does that negate it? No. I think what it is there are things that happen in the human mind and in the human heart that have long-term, epoch traversing strengths, messages. Carl Jung talked about that. Joseph Campbell talked about that. Now, Joseph Campbell's basically an atheist, as I understand, if you know who he was. But he understood this idea of these myths and these symbols. And of course, Carl Jung, he went so far as to say that we not only traverse time in kind of like a reincarnation almost, he talked about entire family systems traveling through time and space. And that somehow God works it out where the people that we were with in some other existence somewhere, we now are here, even though we don't recognize that that's who they are, but God sets it up that way. Go look up family systems under Carl Jung, okay? I think you might find that interesting. Yeah, can't have a positive without a negative. Boy, isn't that true? Like Saturnalia, pagan Yuletime turned Christmas. Yeah, exactly. But you can still use it for good. You just have to realize where it comes from. Do you want to go back to doing the festivals of the Jews, of the Israelites? You want to do that? Actually, that's pretty simple if you want to know. All you got to know is where the moon is and where the sun is. That's the equinoxes. That's all you need to know. All you need to know is the equinox and what phase of the moon you're in, and you can do the Jewish festivals. Okay, I think we've talked about that. Crimson thread, yeah, Debbie, yeah, the crimson thread, yep. All right, good fig tree, thank you. Howie Brown, he's beast. I think you mean based. Such a beautiful name, Lilith. when you understand what that means in Hebrew, you would think it's so pretty. It might sound nice, but all those L's in there with the Tav at the end, bad. Not good. Okay, it's not good at all. All right. Let's see. White girl's name, Debbie. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Joseph. Albar and Sundance. Yeah, that is so funny that we're having this conversation. 4D chess. Yeah, God's 4D chess, right? It's times like this that I realize, sometimes you get down and you think, why isn't God doing something? We got all these horrible things going on in Israel, in Ukraine, in different parts of Africa, even here. Why isn't God doing anything? And then some little thing like this comes across, and he's whispering in your ear going, I will. What can I say? What can I say? All right. See, some people think owls are beautiful. A lot of it has to do with, different, how you're looking. One tattoo I have is a Israel flag burning. Figures I can see you doing that, Walter. I can see you doing that. What about the 8-pointed star? I don't know about that one. I'd have to look at that. Okay, this is how people sell their souls to Hollywood. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Raymond. I hope we're not talking about selling anybody's soul here. We're talking about correspondences between the Egyptian hieroglyphs, Hebrew, and English, and how this miraculously, this I am idea, this who will idea came through all these thousands of years to make this message today. And there's no doubt that this is Joseph. He had we don't know exactly, we know that his name was Yosef, okay, Yosef or Yosef. In Egyptian, he was given the name Zaphnath Paneach, and I talked about that once before. In the name, in the first part, Zaphnath, that's an indication of the god Neith, one of the gods, a female god of Egypt, Neith. But it has to do, the whole idea of Zophnath Paneah is the revealer of dreams, or he speaks to his God, again, which is right here. Okay, he speaks, Hotep, to his God. And you'll see that again in Trey's video, the God I am. Crazy. It's crazy that it came through to the English this far. It's crazy. Yeah, Egypt was the home of Moses, and Jesus lived there for a while. There are people that will argue that, especially with the disagreements by the Jews with what the whole New Testament's about. But as I showed last night, when I came on and I was talking about that little situation with let's see, how did that go? It was, I'm trying to remember the scriptures right now. Proverbs 1:10 and Proverbs 23, because Proverbs 1:10 talks about, it's talked about in Matthew 22:44, where Jesus says, well, if I were his son, or if the Messiah was his son, why would David call him Adonai, or Master, or Lord? And I went over that to show you that that was not an error in the New Testament after all, that the rabbis wanted to change it because Psalms 1:10 to make it sound like it wasn't, but in fact that is the way it is. Okay, so at any rate, that's because it gives credence to the Jesus story to some extent. They don't want to go there at all. And I said before, I'm hard on the Christians, but I'm hard on the Jews too, because there's no doubt that they've altered, if anything, the interpretation of their own Tanakh on several occasions, on many occasions. And I pointed that out. Again, Jeremiah 8:8 even says so. So does Isaiah 28. Okay? So Ophiuchus, yeah, ascribed to in the Sephiroth. Yeah. Well, Ophiuchus is the serpent, right? And he's also the water bearer. It kind of goes both ways. Ophiuchus does. And right now, Ophiuchus is in a particular place in the sky, and it might be one of those things that are being shown to us that this is the time that real big things are going to happen. All right, let me see if we got. We can talk about sevens if one. Who knows who wrote the book 777? I keep seeing that come up here. Anybody know who wrote the book 777? Aleister Crowley, one of the most evil Kabbalists that have ever lived. As a matter of fact, he and another person I probably shouldn't name, but it's a lady. Her name starts with a B. I'll just say Blavatsky. They came up with some really. I mean, some of it's interesting, but there's some really direly bad stuff in there. I am who will, exactly. CCX, exactly. You see it. You see it, CCX, exactly. It's the same thing. I will be whom I will be, or a shorter way to say it is, I am who will, or who will, as the Egyptians would have put it down in their hieroglyphs for Imhotep. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I'm glad you put that up there, CCX. Thank you. Everybody look at that. I am who will. I will be whom I will be. I will be. I will. I am that thing. I am that being who will do. Who will. It's just crazy. It's wonderful. Don't talk, don't balk. 80,000 USA troops. Yeah, I know. See, we have bloodthirsty people that are pushing all this stuff for money and for power, and they hate mankind, and they want to destroy us. And I've talked about that on this channel for a long time. A lot of you that followed me know all about that. Tonight's not the night for that, though. Somebody said, let's see, what was that? Yeah, the serpent. The serpent has good points and bad points, and we won't get into that tonight. But the word for bronze and the word for serpent are very close. Okay, and so there are some other meanings that are going on there that I've talked about before, but I really don't want to go there tonight. Okay, let's see. Thanks for, yeah, CCX is cool, Debbie. Thanks for pointing that out. Who wrote the Bible? Deborah Hart asks, who wrote the Bible? Well, I don't think anybody actually knows. People like to say, well, God wrote it. Well, no, he didn't. even in the New Testament, it says that the prophets, when they wrote those things, they did it when they were moved upon by the Holy Ghost, right? And still subject to error. And I've pointed all of that out. So what you do when you read the Bible is you look for major themes to orient your life with. Major themes. As one brilliant rabbi said when he was asked, and this was before Jesus' time, his name was Hillel, the only commandments that really matter are love God and love your fellow man. Everything else is just commentary. All right. Well, Deborah Hart, you tell me who wrote the Bible. What part of it? The Bible is not a single book, right? You've got, depending upon what version of Bible, again, you're talking about the Catholic Bible, you're talking about the King James, you're talking about the Jerusalem Bible, you're talking about just the Tanakh, just the Torah, just the New Testament. What are you talking about? The point is that there were a lot of authors for all of those books, and even portions of the books. Isaiah looks like it had at least two separate authors. Daniel did something funny. He wrote part of it in Hebrew and part of it in Aramaic. Or was it two different authors? The book of Mark in the New Testament. Do you realize that it stopped before the last chapter of Mark in the original manuscripts, that was added later? So the fact is, Deborah, we don't know who wrote all the books of the Bible. And I pointed that out before. It wasn't considered plagiarism or anything nefarious for somebody to write as a pseudonym of a famous person's name. It wasn't considered a bad thing. The message is what was important. So I don't know. I'm not going to say God wrote everything in there. I'm going to say there are obviously some things, like I have a very strong connection to Genesis 1 up through about chapters 22 or so, as I've talked about before. But I'm very suspicious of Leviticus. And I've given good reason to not trust Deuteronomy, as I've talked about, because Deuteronomy was apparently found by a scribe in Josiah's reign, and they didn't know what it was before that, or it could have been the whole Torah. We don't know. But you look through there and you take the good and you leave the other things that aren't so sure. It's like I was talking about with this whole thing in Israel. The Israelis want to invoke Cherem, which is the wholesale genocide of the Palestinians. And they say they have a right to do that because, one, it's their land, and two, God told them to kill all the Amalekites and leave nobody alive, men, women, or children. So they're saying the Palestinians are Amalekites. And we are Amalekites. So they chose to follow the violent part of the Bible and not go into introspection and do the more important thing, which is Abraham's loving kindness. Which are we going to do? Well, God told us to kill all the Amalekites. Did he really? Or was that put in there by somebody else? If God wants some dirty work done, do you think he could do it himself? So what's going on here? He even says in Isaiah, he says, because supposedly he was telling them that they need to go and do all these blood sacrifices, kill the oxen, kill the cattle, kill the doves, kill this, kill that. And then in Isaiah he says, you know what? I'm sick of all this blood. This sacrifice is ridiculous. I want a sacrifice of the heart. That's what I'm trying to tell you. But you've turned it into this bloodletting. Well, which is it? Did he say to do it or didn't he? I did a video and I said, beware the priests. They have a hand in a lot of this, and they're like lawyers. There's the old saying, if you have one lawyer in a town, he's the poorest man in town. You have two lawyers in town, they're the richest men in town. It's kind of the same with the priests. Okay? I don't care of what make they are. Catholic, Mormon, ministers, Christian ministers, rabbis, it doesn't matter. You're still required to navigate your own way with that one-on-one relationship. So, if a rabbi tells me something that I think is worthwhile, and I've talked about that, or a Christian minister. A good one that I have a lot of respect for is, of course, Pastor Chuck Baldwin, just as an example. Yeah, I'll go along with that. I'll say, yeah, that's a good point, Pastor or Rabbi. I like that. But then you turn around and that rabbi tells me that it's okay for them to kill the Palestinians, every man, woman, and child, and take their land. Yeah, I ain't buying that. And you better not either, Rabbi. You better repent, because you're choosing something out of the Torah that shows who you really are. Right? Okay. Wow, we've been going for almost an hour, and I don't want to keep everybody. It's Saturday night. Yeah, it's not the infallible word of God. It proves it. It even says it isn't in different places, as I've already said, Walter. But it's still, it's like Shakespeare. And people say, hey, you can't equate the Bible with Shakespeare. Well, in this regard, it talks about the human experience. And then you decide what you want to be. You want to be the serpent in the Garden of Eden? Hey, do it. It might not end up well for you, but you can do that. You want to be like Hezekiah's son, Manasseh. You want to do that? Okay, it's there. All right? It's a path. You're given paths to follow. And what path you choose says more about you. I'm being kind of nasty here. Says more about you than it does about the Bible you're reading. Okay? Just keep that in mind. Okay. Anonymous, my version doesn't have them labeled. I'm not sure. It doesn't have them labeled. Not sure what you mean by that. Alan and Sharon, Ezra is said to have restored 94 books before there was a New Testament. Ezra is a problem, okay? Ezra redacted the writings of his time, and that's where the Tanakh came from. I've already told you about them finding the book of the law, whether it was the whole Torah of the book of Deuteronomy in Josiah's time, as some people would want to say. Ezra had to put together, he had to resolve issues on several fronts of the the Jews at the time, the Judahites that were coming back from Babylon. He had to resolve a lot of issues there. There was a political move. And so the whole idea of the block Hebrew, it used to be the Proto-Hebrew, right? Which some people say came from the Phoenician. It didn't. It was the other way around. But still, when they were in Babylon, they really wanted to have things that were more just for them, that they could identify with just them. So they actually changed their alphabet, their aleph-bet, to the block Hebrew form. I don't know if you knew that, but Ezra did that. That's one of the things Ezra did, for good or for bad. In some ways, it was bad. I use the block form because that's what you're going to see almost everywhere. But I can use the Proto-Hebrew. It's minus, the original Proto-Hebrew is minus a few letters that they have in the block Hebrew, because there's some duplication there, but in the block Hebrew. But there were reasons for that. And I give Ezra kudos for it in some regards, but in others, it wasn't necessarily a good move. Okay, it just depends on some other things. But anyway, Ezra has some good points and some bad points. Frankly, I'm very leery of Ezra. Frankly, okay, very, very leery of him. Yeah, that's right. There is no Lucifer, Todd. The name Lucifer is a Latin word. Doesn't actually exist in the Hebrew. It's Hillel. And the full thing, as I talked about before, and Walter knows this, and I think Debbie does, and whoever else has been following me for a long time, the full name is Hillel ben Shakar. Means bright star, son of the morning. Well, that's funny, because Jesus was called the son of the morning star, rather, in Revelation. So what's going on here? Okay. Anyway, just so you know, yeah, there is no Lucifer. That was added. Somebody said Dominic was added. The Lucifer was added by the monks, Dominican monks, in the King James. Okay, to take land not of theirs. Yeah. That's a Sandy Aaron. Are there two different gods operating in the Old Testament? Whoa. Do you really want me to go there? I tell you what, I've kind of talked about this before. Go read Psalms 82. All right, go read Psalm 82, and yeah, that'll do for now. Just go read Psalm 82. Uh, that'll tell you a little bit. Elohim is plural, and the Jews will tell you that they use the plural form because they're trying to show how magnanimous he is. No, that was one of the things that Ezra did because there were polytheistic Israelites. Okay, and he was trying to resolve the Elohist philosophies with the Yahwist. The Yahwist would be the monotheistic side, the Elohist would be the polytheistic side, and he was trying to balance that out. So I'll just tell you to go read Psalm 82, and then you can come and tell me next time, okay? All in all, there's one God operating in all of it in the Old Testament. But remember, men are putting their input into that and cause some problems. I talked about David moving the Ark of the Covenant from Shiloh to Jerusalem because he was trying, whoever that was, he was trying to consolidate his political power in Judah, in the land of Judah. God didn't tell him to move that. I don't care what the scriptures say. God didn't tell him to do that. Shiloh was where it's supposed to be, and the prophecies that Jacob gave in Genesis prove that. If Genesis is right, and I think it is, all right, that the scepter would not depart from Judah nor a lawgiver between his feet until Shiloh comes. So there we go. Oh, I couldn't answer that. James McVicker, he says, was Elisha the pre-incarnation of Jesus and Elijah? John, I think we've got to be careful with all of those. Those were, of course, some accusations in the New Testament. And then, you've got in Malachi where it talks about that, in those days I will send you the prophet Elijah, who will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children of the fathers. That's in Malachi. Chapter 4, when you have a chapter 4, sometimes you don't. But Elijah can be the spirit of Elijah too, and I know some people won't want to hear that, but I think there are people that stand in those offices, which is also why I talk about the Messiah. Jesus isn't the only Messiah. David was a Messiah, so he stood in that office of Messiah. I don't want to go down that road too much today, okay? But I think you get the idea of what I'm saying. Do you still have Mormons? What do you mean? There are a lot of Mormons around in the West. Idaho, Wyoming, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, of course. I don't think there are too many in Colorado, but yeah, there are Mormons all over the place. If you're asking if I'm a Mormon, no. They wouldn't let me if I wanted to be. And the daughter's called what? Crucified? I'm not sure what you're talking about, Debbie. Sorry I missed you there. Oh yeah, a lot of people have tried to abscond with Egyptian stuff because there's some truths there, and they want to take them for themselves. Yeah, I have a problem with the ooh sound in. There's a lady, I guess it's a lady, who wrote me the other day because I've talked about this ooh sound. There's no way it would be in the name of God. I just won't go with that. But she tried to say it had the phonetic power sounds, and that's the reason. I know. No, I can't buy that. If there's an ooh in God's name, that's the wrong God as far as I'm concerned. And if you don't know why, basically it comes down to the idea that the ooh sound is bad. It's below. It means sub. So no, I don't think so. I don't think God's name has a U sound in it. What was that? In the manner of Melchizedek. You guys are talking amongst yourselves. I guess that's good. Are there polygamous Mormons? Oh, they're all over the place. They're polygamous Christians. Are you kidding? People don't know about this. They're polygamous Christian. People have nothing to do with Mormonism. Yeah, I know them personally. I know them. And they get it from the Old Testament. And they also get it from the New Testament because Jesus didn't condemn it. Make of it what you will. Yeah, they're polygamist. They're polygamist Muslims. Polygamist Mormons, polygamist Christians, polygamist Hindus. Polygamy is a big thing in Africa for the tribal leaders and for people of stature. When I was in the military, this is kind of funny because, at the time, my reputation was well known. The Army knew who I was and my background. They didn't have a problem with it. But I went on a mission to South America, and one of the places I went was Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I was invited with some other officers to a state dinner. Well, before that, I was introduced to the head honcho who was over the whole military. I forget exactly what his title was now, but it's kind of like the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff or the Secretary of Defense, that level, right? And I looked at him and I thought, this guy looks German to me, and he was. He spoke Spanish, but he did it with a German accent, so he was originally a German, but he was head of their military. So, he's one of the Nazis that obviously had fled and gone to Argentina, and now he's in charge of the military there. But he was with this really beautiful young lady, and I was led to believe it was his wife. This guy was probably, he was at least in his 60s, and maybe a little older. And this woman was gorgeous. And I thought, well, that's what power brings, right? Well, then we go to a state dinner, and he's there with his older lady, and this is his wife. Well, in South America, apparently, men of means, men of stature, men of power, are expected to have mistresses. Married, they're going to be married to a woman, but if they don't have mistresses, they lose the respect of their wife. Now, the wife doesn't want to associate with the mistresses. It's not like in the polygamous community where the women get together and do things together and stuff like that. No, but if her husband didn't have a mistress, she wouldn't have respect for him. That's the way it is in a lot of parts of the world. No, I mean, like, do older guys have hormones? I sure do. I still do. Oh, yeah, that's nice of you, Debbie. Roy is not a Mormon, but he's just a caregiver of women. You're very nice. Debbie knows a lot about me. We've talked several hours together. Okay, it's been over an hour. I think we've covered a few things. Favorite Capitalist? No, see, my problem, I had a person who's followed me for quite a long time on Twitter, now X, who asked me what I thought about Cabalism, and he brought up some specific points. And of course, I've studied that. I've talked to you about it. Um, and Cabalism isn't bad. Again, it's how you use it. And I'll just say this: the early Heckalot, which was using the divine names to ascend through the different heavens, let's put it that way. And the Merkava of the Ezekiel vision is an example of that. That was what Kabbalah turned into without all of the benefits after the destruction of the Second Temple, because they lost all the ritual implements and the ability to use the name of God in their ascents. So what occurred, and the Jewish Kabbalists will be really upset at me for saying this. I don't care. All right. I don't have a lot of respect for the medieval Kabbalists. They just went too far. They get into all this, and I'm not saying that there aren't some real interesting things mystically and supernaturally that are there, but they're like lawyers. They like making it complicated, and they'll say to me, "Well, Roy, you don't know how to ascend through. You don't know how to use these meditations and contemplations to get there. So who are you to talk about it?" No, I've done it. Okay, part of my study, and the Kabbalism that I deal with you all here on YouTube, for instance, the meaning of the individual letters that help to make up the words in Hebrew, the mem meaning water, the yod meaning hand or seed of man, those types of things. Those help you to understand deeper meanings in the written word. Do I like the idea of meditating and maybe going and talking to an angel? Yeah, but I've got an old saying for that, okay? And this is what I'll say. And I got this from one of my great sages that I took a lot of lessons from, and I've said it here before. Everybody wants to talk to God. Everybody. The question is, who does God want to talk to? So if you're trying to conjure up God, you're kind of dealing with a Ouija board of sorts, even in Kabbalah. So that's the bad side. Now, again, the Jewish Kabbalists, especially, if I'm sitting here and I'm saying, I have some respect for Rabbi Akiva. I do. But Luria? No. Sorry, I don't. And people that know about Cabalism will know what I'm talking about. The medieval Kabbalists I have a very difficult time with. That's where Aleister Crowley went. Okay, and it got bad. All right. I'm not saying some of it doesn't work. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you're trying to conjure up God, and that's not something you should do. Okay. All right. I think we better end it there. It's been over an hour, and I didn't even mean to go this long. Thanks for coming. I hope, look at this, and right now, to sum it all up, I want you to go and watch the Trey Smith's presentation in the description box. Okay, the link is there. If it doesn't work for some reason, just go to Trey Smith on YouTube and look for the video I Am. Okay, and you'll see it. So what we've talked about here is that Trey came out with this situation where the I Am and Imhotep, that Imhotep was actually Joseph of Egypt, and he breaks down why, and he said all the same things I've known about when I was doing my Egyptian studies, okay? So he's right on that, as far as I'm concerned. Imhotep was Joseph, and it means he sees God, he speaks for God. That's what it means. The I Am is the God, and Hotep is who he is, okay? That's his name, Hotep. He sees, and then he sees and he speaks to the God I Am. And Trey will explain that a little bit more. So somehow or another, when this whole thing was put together, this was the summation of what I'm talking about tonight, amazingly, phonetically, it moved from Hebrew into Egyptian into English. That was an incredible transformation. The phonetic sounds, I am, Yod, Mem, I am, they're all there. And me, when you read it right to left, as you would in Hebrew, because the Egyptians, they did it up here too. They put the letter, see the Mem, they put there, and the Yod they put there, because that's how it would have worked. So they didn't translate it the other way, but it turns out good either way. You get the me, who will, or the I am of Exodus. Crazy. And then the wheaten cake. That's Bethlehem, which of course is another reason why Bethlehem is south. It's actually of Jerusalem. It's actually part of Judea. But the fact that it means the house of the wheaten cake symbolizes, again, something about the pyramids and Joseph of Egypt, which is really important in the whole scheme of things as far as I'm concerned. I've talked about that before with who Jesus Christ may have actually been and why it was absconded with by the whole story and the name by other people, including the Jews, to make kind of muddy the water. Okay, keep your eyes on the horizon, ears to the ground, situational awareness on high. Pray, stay out of the way, stay aware, but don't get too deeply involved on anything that could cause you trouble. I'm not saying not to speak out. I do all the time. But there are people out there that will try to spur you into an action that their only goal is to get you in trouble. Look at poor Owen Schroyer. Thank goodness he's out of jail now. But the trauma he was put through. He came out really strong. He looks pretty good. If you know who Owen Schroyer is, he works for InfoWars, and they put him in jail for speaking his mind on January 6th. He didn't do anything illegal. All he did is talk, and they said that he caused all that trouble. No, he didn't. They lie up there. The Department of Justice and the D.C. court system are evil to the core. Just the way it is. All right, I think I've said everything. Thanks for coming again, Debbie. Thanks for telling me about the owl bar. I totally forgot about that. I didn't realize. And here we are talking about it here tonight. All right. Till next time, everybody, take care.